I had just finished signing the final papers on my dream apartment, a sleek luxury penthouse overlooking the city skyline, when my phone buzzed. It was Mom. "Sit down," she said, her tone icy and deliberate. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Okay? Don't try to lie to us. We know about your apartment." I blinked. My stomach dropped. How could she possibly know? I hadn't told anyone, not Dad, not my brother, not even my best friend. I had planned this carefully, saving every penny, negotiating every detail, and keeping it a complete secret until the right moment. And now, it was all out in the open. I arrived at their house later that evening, my mind racing with questions. Mom was sitting on the couch, her arms crossed, her eyes sharper than I had ever seen. Dad was there too, unusually silent, watching me with a hint of disappointment I couldn't quite place. "Why didn't you tell us?" Mom asked calmly, but her calm was frightening, like a storm held back by sheer control. I wanted to surprise you. I wanted to show you I could manage on my own," I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. Dad shook his head slowly. "We're not upset about your success, but secrecy like this? It's concerning." And then I noticed it, the subtle smirk on my older brother's face, just at the corner of the room. That smirk that always carried judgment and arrogance, as if nothing I ever did could be right in his eyes. "You didn't think about us at all," he said, voice dripping with mockery. "Just selfishly doing whatever you want." My chest tightened. I had anticipated Dad and Mom might be concerned, but I hadn't expected my brother to attack me first, framing me as reckless, careless, and immature. My apartment, my achievement, suddenly felt tainted by their disapproval and his condescension. As the evening progressed, I realized the deeper truth: the betrayal wasn't about the apartment. It was about control. My family, or at least some members, had expected me to keep playing the role they assigned: obedient, dependent, transparent. And my independence had crossed an invisible line. Every word from my brother, every sigh from my mother, every silent look from Dad reinforced it. They thought they could dictate my life, judge my choices, and assert their dominance without consequence. But I wasn't powerless. As I left their house that night, the city lights of my new apartment reflecting in my rearview mirror, a small but determined thought settled in my mind: if they wanted to control me, they were going to regret underestimating what I was capable of. This wasn't just about a property. It was the opening move in a game they didn't even know they were playing, and I was ready to make the next move. The next few days were a delicate dance. I thought perhaps the tension with my family would ease, but instead, subtle cracks began to show, little signs that all was far from ordinary. It started with Mom. She called almost every day, but her tone had shifted. Instead of casual curiosity about my apartment, her questions were sharp, probing, and oddly personal. "Who helped you with the renovations?" she asked one morning, her voice sweet, but her eyes gleaming with something I couldn't quite place. "And are you sure you made the right choice?" Then there were Dad's comments, small and almost innocuous, but they stung. "You know, it's important to keep family interests in mind," he said over dinner, glancing at my brother as if to underline the point. Was he warning me? Or subtly siding with someone else? The real alarm came from my brother. At first, I tried to dismiss it as coincidence, but his behavior grew harder to ignore. Late-night texts, sudden urgent calls, hushed whispers when I entered a room. It was as if he was orchestrating something behind my back. He asked questions about my bank account under the guise of concern, probed into who I invited over, and even criticized my taste in furniture as reckless spending. I began noticing patterns. Every time I mentioned inviting a friend or contractor, he would appear nearby, casually reminding me about expenses, deadlines, or proper etiquette. It wasn't open hostility, it was a soft, insidious pressure that made me question my every decision. Even Dad and Mom seemed to change. Suddenly, any choice I made regarding my apartment became a potential mistake in their eyes. Every joy I derived from this achievement carried the weight of judgment. Their words were laced with concern, but beneath it, I sensed control, expectation, and subtle manipulation. I couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just worried, they were watching, evaluating, waiting for a misstep. And my brother, his smirk, his quiet glances, the way he lingered near documents or contracts. I began to wonder, was he planning something? Something to undermine me? At night, I lay awake replaying every interaction. Was I imagining the distrust in their eyes? Was I reading too much into coincidence, or were these truly the first signs of betrayal? The emotional strain was beginning to mount. Excitement over my apartment had curdled into anxiety. I loved what I had achieved, but every conversation with my family now felt like navigating a minefield. Each word, each glance, each innocuous question carried hidden weight. And deep down, I knew something crucial. I couldn't ignore these feelings. Something was off. Something didn't add up. Whatever game was being played behind my back, I would need to be careful. Watchful. Strategic. Because the first red flags had appeared, subtle, almost invisible, but unmistakable to anyone paying attention. And I intended to pay very close attention, had hoped that the unease I felt was just paranoia, a side effect of my own excitement over the apartment. But that illusion shattered the day I discovered the truth. It was a quiet Sunday morning when I decided to check the mailbox. Among the usual bills and flyers, a thick envelope caught my eye. The handwriting was unmistakable, my brother's. My heart raced as I opened it, only to find documents that made my blood run cold. He had been manipulating Dad and Mom behind my back, twisting their concerns into directives to undermine me. Worse, he had been trying to gain partial control of my apartment through forged legal claims and secret advice from a lawyer he had paid to craft loopholes in my favor, loopholes that were, in reality, traps. I read through email chains, messages, and contracts he had copied to himself, each one a meticulous plan to wrest my property from my hands. My brother had deliberately presented himself as helpful while secretly orchestrating my downfall. The evidence was undeniable. He had planned to make it seem as though I had mismanaged the apartment, draining funds and creating conflicts, so Mom and Dad would step in for my own good, and he would be the one in control. Shock. Disbelief. Rage. My hands shook, my chest tightened, and I felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath me. The person I had trusted most, my own brother, had plotted against me for months, maybe years, to assert dominance and claim what was rightfully mine. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My mind replayed every conversation, every sly remark, every concerned question. The subtle smirks, the late-night calls, the whispers when I was out of the room, all signs I had sensed but had brushed off as paranoia. I felt betrayed in a way I had never imagined. The betrayal wasn't just about the apartment, it was about trust, family, and respect, things I had believed were unshakable. And now, everything was tainted. But beneath the shock, a spark ignited. I realized that this wasn't the end. If anything, this was my moment. The moment to plan, to gather strength, and to turn the tables. My brother thought he had control, that he could manipulate our parents and diminish me. He had underestimated me. Every shred of deceit he had woven became my roadmap. Every secret he tried to keep now served as proof of his intent. I could feel the shift inside me, from heartbreak to clarity. Rage fueled focus, and focus whispered a promise. He would regret ever thinking he could outsmart me. I didn't know exactly how yet, but one thing was certain, revenge would be coming. Calculated, inevitable, and utterly satisfying. And my brother? He would never see it coming. The apartment felt different that evening. The golden light of sunset poured across the polished floors, but instead of joy, I felt a simmering fire inside me, a mixture of betrayal, hurt, and a growing determination. My brother had tried to undermine me, manipulate my parents, and claim what was mine. But now, something inside me shifted. I sat on the balcony, overlooking the city, and replayed every moment of the past few weeks. The whispered calls, the sly smiles, the subtle criticisms, they weren't just coincidences. They were signs, clues, breadcrumbs left by someone who thought he could outsmart me. And yet, I realized, it wasn't just him. My own doubts, my hesitation, had given him power. I had let his subtle manipulations and my parents' cautious warnings weigh me down. But that ended tonight. A flash of clarity hit me as I remembered Dad's quiet words, "It's not about the apartment. It's about control and trust." He hadn't intended to warn me about my brother, he had been too conditioned by years of familial hierarchy. But now, I understood. Control was the battleground, and trust had been weaponized against me. I stood up, feeling a new energy course through me. I wasn't just a victim of circumstance, I was the one who could change the outcome. The apartment, my life, my respect, these weren't things anyone could take if I didn't let them. I thought of my brother, smug and overconfident, thinking his schemes were invisible. The realization ignited something else, not blind rage, but strategic resolve. I wouldn't act recklessly. I wouldn't lash out blindly. I would be deliberate, calculating, and patient. Every move I made from now on would be precise, leaving no room for error. I felt my heartbreak transforming into focus. Every pang of betrayal sharpened my mind instead of clouding it. I would protect what was mine, expose the deceit, and reclaim not just my apartment, but my dignity. That night, I made a promise to myself. No more doubt. No more hesitation. My brother had underestimated me, and that mistake would be his downfall. I would turn his arrogance into his undoing, his manipulations into his exposure. The turning point wasn't just about the apartment. It was about reclaiming my voice, my agency, and my power. And as I looked out over the city lights, a quiet but firm thought settled in my mind: I am done being underestimated. The game has changed, and now, I am in control. For the first time since discovering the betrayal, I felt a calm determination, a sense that no matter how clever my brother thought he was, I had something far stronger: clarity, patience, and the will to win. The next step was clear: plan, prepare, and execute. And when the time came, he wouldn't just lose, he would be exposed in a way that left no room for denial. The fire was lit. The game was on. The next morning, my mindset had shifted completely. I woke up not with fear or confusion, but with purpose. My brother thought he had me cornered, that he could whisper lies into our parents' ears, twist narratives, and paint me as irresponsible. He still believed he was in control. Perfect. Because nothing is more dangerous than a villain who thinks he's already won. I grabbed a notebook and started writing. Not feelings, facts. Every suspicious moment, every overheard comment, every financial irregularity I had ignored started forming a pattern. My brother didn't just want influence, he wanted possession. He wanted access to the apartment, maybe even my savings, and he was working behind the scenes to get it. But if he needed secrecy to win, transparency would be my weapon. Step 1: Gather proof. I logged into the building's management portal and downloaded every payment record for the apartment. Management had previously emailed me about unauthorized inquiries made by a family member. They didn't name him, but I didn't need them to. I saved the logs, screenshots, and dates. Then I contacted the bank, pulling statements showing money missing from the joint family account. His fingerprints were everywhere. Step 2: Confirm the lies. I recorded a casually friendly conversation with him later that day. He laughed, pretending to be shocked that Mom and Dad confronted me. Then he casually slipped in, maybe if you let me manage the apartment papers, things would go smoother. There it was: motive, intent, and greed wrapped in sugar. Step 3. Set the trap. If he wanted control of the apartment, I would give him just enough rope to hang himself. I printed a fake but convincing transfer of management document and left it in my room, half tucked out of a folder. Then, I made sure to leave the door slightly open as I ran to the store. It took him exactly 14 minutes to sneak in. The smart camera hidden inside my bookshelf caught everything, him tiptoeing in, snapping photos of the document, and texting someone, finally. He's transferring it. I'll talk to Mom tonight. That was all the proof I needed. Step 4. Build the stage for exposure. I scheduled a family meeting for Sunday evening, under the pretense of clearing misunderstandings. My parents agreed, still unaware of the storm building under their roof. My brother smirked the whole week, walking around like a king who already owned the crown. He had no idea that every step he took deeper into his lies only sealed his fate further. By the time Sunday arrived, my folder was full of screenshots, recordings, bank logs, camera footage, and timestamps. Every piece a lethal strike. My hands didn't shake anymore. My voice didn't falter. He wanted a battle for control. But I was preparing for his downfall. And when the truth exploded in that living room, nothing would remain the same. Sunday evening arrived like a loaded gun on the table, silent, heavy, and waiting to go off. My parents sat on the couch, tense but hopeful. My mother kept wringing her hands. My father stared at the floor. And my brother? He lounged back in the armchair like he owned the place, smirking with the confidence of someone who believed victory was already in his pocket. Let's finally clear this up, he said dramatically, as if he were the victim here. Absolutely, I replied. Let's start with what you've been doing behind my back. His eyebrows twitched. Just a flicker. But it was enough. I pulled out the folder. Thick. Heavy. A compilation of every lie he had built into his little empire of manipulation. I set it gently on the coffee table. What's that supposed to be? He scoffed. Your truth, I said. I clicked the remote, and the TV lit up, the first video from my bookshelf camera. There he was. Sneaking into my room. Looking around like a thief. Taking photos of the fake transfer document. Texting someone, finally. He's transferring it. I'll talk to Mom tonight. My mother gasped. My father's head snapped up. My brother turned pale. That's fake, he stuttered. Really? I pulled out my second piece of evidence, the printed bank statements. Because these show you transferred over $3,000 from the family account into your personal one, and then told Mom I withdrew it. Mom covered her mouth. You said he stole family funds. My brother started shaking. I needed it. I was going to put it back. I wasn't done. Maybe tell them what else you needed, I said, clicking the next video. The audio recording filled the room. Maybe if you let me manage the apartment papers, things would go smoother. My parents stared at him in disbelief. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He was trapped. Every lie exposed. Every angle sealed. But the climax wasn't the evidence. It was the final scene. I pulled out the printed building management report detailing multiple unauthorized visits and inquiries under his name. You weren't just trying to control the apartment, I said softly. You were preparing to take it from me. The silence that followed was nuclear. My father stood up, trembling with anger. You tried to steal your own brother's home? On top of lying? Manipulating us? Stealing money? My brother collapsed into the chair, defeated, face in his hands. The king had lost his crown, publicly, irrevocably. Then came the finishing blow. I slid the final paper across the table, a formal legal notice from my attorney. This, I announced, is a temporary restraining order preventing you from accessing my property, bank information, or personal documents ever again. Mom gasped. Dad nodded in approval. My brother looked up, devastated. You're taking this to court? I leaned in. You tried to ruin my life. I'm simply ending your control. His world collapsed in that moment, financially, emotionally, socially. The humiliation was complete. And for the first time in months, I finally felt free. The storm had passed. The living room that once felt heavy with tension now breathed calm. My brother no longer carried the smugness that had made my blood boil. Instead, there was emptiness, a hollow reminder that manipulation has a price. My parents sat in silence, processing the cascade of truths they had just witnessed. Their disappointment in him was palpable, but there was relief in their eyes toward me, relief that I had handled the situation with control, evidence, and intelligence rather than blind rage. In the days that followed, the legal proceedings finalized swiftly. My brother was barred from interfering with the apartment or accessing any joint accounts. My parents apologized, not only for their initial naivety but for allowing him the room to manipulate. I accepted their remorse graciously. Forgiveness wasn't weakness, it was power, the power to reclaim peace. I walked through the apartment one evening, the sunlight streaming across the living room floor. It felt like mine in every sense, not just legally, but morally and emotionally. Every corner reflected the effort, patience, and clarity that had guided me from betrayal to triumph. Friends and extended family, who had been watching the drama unfold quietly, began reaching out. Respect replaced the whispers. Messages poured in, commending me not just for reclaiming what was mine, but for standing strong in the face of deceit. The hero of my own story wasn't a title I sought, it was the reality I had forged. And my brother? He faded into a cautionary tale of arrogance and hubris. Every attempt to manipulate me had backfired spectacularly. The more he tried to control, the more exposed he became. It was poetic justice at its purest, the very traps he had laid for me ensnared him instead. I realized something crucial, the betrayal had been a gift in disguise. It forced me to discover my own resilience, sharpen my instincts, and assert my worth unapologetically. I wasn't just free of him, I was stronger, wiser, and more confident than I had ever been. As I look back, I feel a shiver of satisfaction at the universe balancing the scales. Some lessons are harsh, but justice has a way of revealing itself to those who refuse to stay silent or submissive. To everyone watching this story, have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? How did it shape your strength? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I want to hear your stories. And if you enjoyed this journey of betrayal, resilience, and poetic justice, don't forget to subscribe for more stories where the underdog fights back and triumphs. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't chaos or anger, it's watching someone's own schemes crumble while you rise unshaken. After all, the cleverest trap is the one your betrayer sets for themselves.